The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting long shadows across the ornate carpet where Prince William stood motionless. His hands trembled slightly as he held the medical report, the words blurring together as his eyes struggled to focus. The diagnosis was clear, written in cold medical terminology that somehow made everything feel more real and more devastating at the same time. Catherine had been feeling unwell for weeks. What started as fatigue and occasional headaches had gradually developed into something more concerning. She had tried to dismiss it initially, attributing her symptoms to the demanding schedule of royal duties and the constant pressure of public life. But William had noticed the subtle changes, the way she would pause mid-sentence during conversations, the slight tremor in her hands when she thought no one was looking, and the way she would grip the stair railing a little tighter than usual. The palace corridors felt different that morning. The usual bustle of staff preparing for the day seemed muted, as if the very walls understood the gravity of what was happening behind closed doors. William had insisted on accompanying Catherine to every medical appointment, despite the protests from his security detail about the logistical challenges. He needed to be there, needed to hear every word the doctors said, needed to ask the questions that Catherine was too overwhelmed to voice. Dr. Harrison, Catherine's longtime physician, had delivered the news with the gentle professionalism that comes from years of practice in difficult conversations. The tests had revealed what they had all feared but hoped against: a condition that would require extensive treatment and would significantly impact Catherine's ability to fulfill her royal duties. The prognosis was hopeful, the doctor had emphasized, but the road ahead would be challenging, unpredictable, and would demand difficult decisions about priorities and responsibilities. William's mind raced back to their conversation the previous evening. They had sat in their private sitting room, the children finally asleep after what felt like hours of bedtime stories and reassurances. Catherine had been unusually quiet during dinner, picking at her food while George, Charlotte, and Louis chattered about their school activities. It was Louis who had noticed first, asking his mother why she looked sad. Catherine had managed to smile and deflected his concern with a question about his art project, but William could see the effort it took. After the children were settled, they had finally talked openly about what they both knew was coming. The test results would arrive the next morning, and, regardless of what they revealed, their lives were about to change dramatically. Catherine had been characteristically strong, focusing on practical matters: how they would tell the children, what adjustments would need to be made to their schedules, how they could maintain some semblance of normalcy during what would undoubtedly be a very public health journey. But William had seen through her composure. He had watched her carefully fold and refold the same piece of paper, a nervous habit she had developed during stressful times. He had noticed how she avoided making eye contact when she spoke about the future, as if looking directly at him would make her carefully constructed strength crumble. Most tellingly, he had seen the fear flash across her face when she thought he wasn't watching, the same expression he remembered from the early days of their relationship when the constant media attention had nearly driven them apart. The weight of his position had never felt heavier. As second in line to the throne, William's life had always been planned, scheduled, and scrutinized. Every decision had implications not just for his family, but for the monarchy and the nation. The expectations were clear and unwavering: duty before personal preference, service before self-interest, obligation before desire. These principles had been ingrained in him from childhood, reinforced through years of training and preparation for his future role. But, now, faced with Catherine's health crisis, those principles felt insufficient. The traditional royal approach of maintaining a stiff upper lip and carrying on regardless seemed not just inadequate but cruel. How could he continue with scheduled engagements and ceremonial duties while his wife battled a serious illness? How could he smile and wave at crowds while privately worrying about medical appointments and treatment schedules? How could he represent stability and continuity when his own world felt like it was shifting beneath his feet? The palace staff had already begun the delicate process of adjusting schedules and managing public communications. Press secretaries were crafting carefully worded statements that would acknowledge Catherine's condition without revealing too much detail. Event coordinators were identifying which engagements could be postponed, which could be handled by other family members, and which were absolutely unmovable. The machinery of royal life was adapting, as it always did, to accommodate new realities while maintaining the facade of seamless continuity. But William knew that administrative adjustments wouldn't be enough. The decision he was contemplating went far beyond rescheduling appearances or delegating responsibilities. It challenged fundamental assumptions about royal duty and would likely be met with resistance from advisors who had spent decades perfecting the careful balance between personal life and public service. He was considering something that hadn't been done in living memory, a significant step back from royal duties to prioritize family over obligation. The precedent weighed heavily on his mind. His father, now King Charles, had never wavered in his commitment to royal duties, even during his own health challenges and personal difficulties. His grandfather, Prince Philip, had maintained an active schedule well into his 90s, only stepping back when age made it physically impossible to continue. The expectation was clear: members of the royal family served until they could no longer serve, and personal circumstances were managed privately without affecting public responsibilities. William's phone buzzed with messages from private secretaries, equerries, and senior palace officials. Everyone wanted to know about scheduling adjustments, about which engagements could proceed as planned, about how to manage public expectations. But none of the messages addressed what he really needed to discuss: how to balance his role as a husband and father with his obligations as a future king when those roles seemed to be pulling him in opposite directions. He thought about his children, who were still unaware of the full extent of their mother's diagnosis. George, at 11, was old enough to sense that something was wrong but young enough to be protected from the adult complexities of the situation. Charlotte, ever perceptive at 9, had been asking more questions lately, noticing changes in routine and picking up on the subtle tensions between her parents. Louis, at 6, remained blissfully unaware, more concerned with his toys and playground adventures than with the undercurrents of worry that had begun to permeate the household. The question of what to tell the children had been one of the most difficult conversations he and Catherine had faced. They both wanted to be honest without causing unnecessary fear, to prepare them for changes without overwhelming them with details they weren't ready to understand. The balance between transparency and protection felt impossible to achieve, especially when they weren't entirely sure what lay ahead themselves. Catherine's strength throughout the diagnostic process had been remarkable, but William could see the toll it was taking. She had insisted on maintaining her normal schedule as much as possible, attending engagements and public appearances with her usual grace and composure. But he knew her well enough to recognize the signs of strain: the way she would take a moment longer to compose herself before entering a room, the slight hesitation before accepting invitations for future events, the careful way she chose her words when discussing upcoming plans. The medical team had outlined several treatment options, each with its own timeline, side effects, and demands on Catherine's time and energy. The most promising approach would require regular hospital visits, periods of reduced activity, and careful monitoring of her condition. It was manageable, they assured the couple, but it would require significant lifestyle adjustments and unwavering support from family and medical professionals. William found himself calculating time: how many hours each week would be devoted to medical appointments, how much additional rest Catherine would need, how their family schedule would need to be restructured to accommodate treatment requirements. The mathematics of royal life, which had always seemed complex but manageable, suddenly felt overwhelming when measured against the realities of illness and recovery. His private secretary had already begun reaching out to other royal family members to discuss increased duties and responsibilities. The Duke of Edinburgh and Princess Anne were prepared to take on additional engagements, and arrangements were being made to ensure that the most important ceremonial functions would be covered. But William knew that redistributing his workload was only part of the solution. What Catherine needed most wasn't logistical support but his presence, his attention, and his unwavering commitment to putting their family first during this challenging time. The decision that had been forming in his mind for days was becoming clearer. He would need to make a choice that honored both his love for his family and his sense of duty to the crown. It would be a decision that challenged conventional expectations and might be met with criticism from both the press and traditional royal supporters. But, as he looked at Catherine's medical report once more, William realized that some choices transcended protocol and precedent. The morning continued with a series of urgent meetings. Palace officials wanted to discuss media strategy, medical privacy, and the logistics of managing public expectations during an uncertain period. Each conversation felt surreal to William, as if they were discussing someone else's life rather than the woman he loved and the mother of his children. The clinical efficiency with which royal life adapted to crisis was both impressive and deeply unsettling. Throughout these discussions, one phrase kept echoing in his mind, something Catherine had said during one of their late-night conversations about the future. She had quietly admitted that her greatest fear wasn't the illness itself, but the possibility that it would force her to disappoint people who depended on her. The weight of that statement, the selflessness it revealed even in the face of personal crisis, had convinced William that his response needed to be equally thoughtful and equally committed to what truly mattered. The decision that had been building in William's mind crystallized during a quiet moment alone in his study that evening. The room, lined with leather-bound books and family photographs, had always been his refuge, a place where he could think clearly away from the constant demands of royal life. But tonight, even this sanctuary felt heavy with the weight of what he was contemplating. He pulled out a sheet of paper and began to write, not the formal language of royal communications, but the honest words of a husband and father facing an impossible choice. The letter would never be sent, but writing helped him organize his thoughts and confront the reality of what he needed to do. Each sentence felt like a small rebellion against everything he had been taught about duty, protocol, and the unwavering commitment expected of someone in his position. The next morning brought a flood of obligations that suddenly seemed meaningless in light of Catherine's diagnosis. A charity breakfast, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, a meeting with government officials, each event that had been scheduled weeks in advance now felt like an intrusion on the time he needed to spend with his family. William found himself going through the motions of royal duty while his mind remained focused on medical timelines, treatment schedules, and the 100 small adjustments their family would need to make. During the charity breakfast, he caught himself mid-sentence, realizing he had been delivering remarks about community support and resilience while privately planning how to reorganize his life to provide exactly that kind of support for his own wife. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was speaking about the importance of being present for those who needed help most, while wrestling with whether he could actually live up to those ideals in his personal life. The event organizers and fellow attendees seemed to sense something different in his demeanor, though none could have guessed the source of his distraction. His usual warmth and engagement were there, but filtered through a new lens of understanding about what truly constituted service and sacrifice. The conversations about charitable giving and community involvement took on deeper meaning when viewed through the perspective of someone whose own community, his family, was facing a crisis. Catherine had insisted on maintaining her scheduled appearances, despite William's gentle suggestions that she might want to scale back. Her determination to fulfill her commitments, even while dealing with her diagnosis, exemplified the grace under pressure that had made her such an beloved figure. But William could see the effort it required, the careful management of energy and emotion that went into each public appearance. At a children's hospital visit that afternoon, Catherine's interaction with young patients took on new poignancy. She listened to their stories with her usual compassion, but William noticed the way she held their hands a little longer, the extra attention she paid to their parents' worried expressions. The experience of facing medical uncertainty had given her an even deeper connection to the family she met, but it also served as a constant reminder of the journey she was about to begin. The children had started asking more direct questions about the changes they sensed in their routine. George, with the perceptiveness of an 11-year-old who was already beginning to understand the complexities of his family's public role, had noticed the increase in private conversations between his parents and the unusual number of important calls that seemed to require closed doors and lowered voices. Charlotte had approached the situation with her characteristic directness, asking her father why Mummy seemed tired more often and why there had been so many visits to doctors recently. William had chosen his words carefully, explaining that sometimes adults needed extra medical care to stay healthy, just like when she had needed special attention for her broken arm the previous year. The comparison seemed to satisfy her immediate curiosity while opening the door for more detailed conversations as needed. Louis remained largely oblivious to the undercurrents of concern, though he had begun asking when they would go on their next family holiday. The question, innocent as it was, highlighted one of the many practical considerations that William and Catherine were facing. Travel plans, public appearances, and family traditions would all need to be re-evaluated in light of Catherine's treatment schedule and health requirements. The palace communications team had been working tirelessly to craft public statements that would acknowledge Catherine's health situation without revealing details that the family wanted to keep private. The balance between transparency and privacy was delicate, especially given the intense public interest in every aspect of their lives. William found himself reviewing draft statements and media strategies, but his heart wasn't in the careful wordsmithing and strategic positioning that usually consumes so much royal energy. His phone calls with King Charles had become more frequent and more personal than their usual check-ins about official duties. His father, who had navigated his own health challenges and family crises while maintaining royal responsibilities, offered both practical advice and emotional support. But William could sense that his father didn't fully understand the depth of the decision he was contemplating, a choice that would prioritize family responsibilities over royal duty in ways that previous generations had rarely contemplated. The conversations with palace advisors had become increasingly tense. Senior officials who had spent decades managing royal schedules and public expectations were struggling to understand why William couldn't simply adjust his timeline slightly and continue with his planned engagements. They spoke about duty, tradition, and public expectations as if these abstract concepts outweighed the very real needs of his family during a medical crisis. William found himself remembering conversations with his mother, Princess Diana, about the challenges of balancing personal authenticity with public responsibility. She had often spoken about the importance of putting human needs before institutional requirements, even when that choice was difficult or controversial. Her example had shaped his understanding of what genuine service meant, and it now informed his thinking about how to respond to Catherine's diagnosis. The medical team had provided a detailed timeline for Catherine's treatment, including periods when she would need to limit her activities and times when she would require constant support and monitoring. William studied these schedules with the same attention he usually devoted to state documents, but, instead of thinking about ceremonial duties and public appearances, he was calculating how to be present for every important appointment and available for whatever support Catherine might need. His security detail had begun making discreet inquiries about modifying protection arrangements to accommodate more family-focused activities and fewer public engagements. The logistics of royal security were complex under normal circumstances, but they became exponentially more complicated when trying to balance medical privacy, family needs, and reduced public visibility. Every adjustment required careful coordination and planning that extended far beyond William's personal preferences. The financial implications of stepping back from royal duties were another consideration that required careful thought. While the royal family's resources were substantial, the economics of reduced public engagement were complex, affecting everything from charitable patronages to the broader economic impact of royal visits and events. William knew that his decision would have ripple effects that extended far beyond his personal circumstances. Catherine had expressed concern about the burden her illness might place on other family members who would need to increase their public activities to compensate for any reduction in her and William's schedules. Her selfless worry about inconveniencing others, even while facing her own health challenges, reinforced William's conviction that she deserved his complete focus and support during this difficult time. The couple had begun having conversations with grief counselors and family therapists about how to help their children navigate the uncertainty ahead. These discussions had proven invaluable, providing practical strategies for age-appropriate communication and emotional support. But they also highlighted the extent to which their family's private challenges would require ongoing attention and care that would be difficult to provide while maintaining a full schedule of public responsibilities. William's evening walks through the palace gardens had become longer and more contemplative. The familiar paths and carefully maintained landscapes provided a peaceful setting for reflection, away from the constant pressure of phones, meetings, and obligations. During these solitary moments, he found clarity about what mattered most and what he was willing to sacrifice to ensure his family's well-being. The precedent for his contemplated decision was limited, but not entirely absent. Other members of royal families around the world had made similar choices when faced with family crises, though such decisions were rarely discussed openly or analyzed in detail. William had researched these cases, looking for guidance and understanding about how to navigate uncharted territory while maintaining dignity and purpose. His relationship with Catherine had always been built on mutual support and shared responsibility. Now, facing her health challenges, William felt a deep need to demonstrate the same commitment and partnership that she had shown throughout their marriage and their journey into royal life. Her strength during public scrutiny, her grace under pressure, and her unwavering dedication to their family had earned his complete devotion, which he now felt called to express through actions rather than words. The letters and messages of support that had begun arriving from around the world provided both comfort and additional pressure. People who had followed their relationship from the beginning were offering prayers, encouragement, and expressions of love that reminded William of the genuine affection and respect that the public felt for Catherine. These communications reinforced his determination to protect her and support her in whatever way she needed, regardless of the professional consequences. As he prepared for what would be one of the most important conversations of his life, a discussion with senior palace officials about his decision, William felt a sense of peace that had been absent for weeks. The choice he was about to announce would surprise many people and disappoint some, but it aligned with his deepest values and his understanding of what it meant to be a husband, father, and, ultimately, a person of integrity. The morning of William's announcement arrived with an unusual stillness in Kensington Palace. Staff members went about their duties with a sense of anticipation that something significant was about to happen, though few knew exactly what. William had requested a private meeting with his senior advisors, palace officials, and key members of the royal household, a gathering that typically signaled major changes in protocol or planning. He had spent the previous evening with Catherine, finalizing the details of his decision and ensuring that she fully understood and supported what he was about to do. Their conversation had been emotional but resolute, with Catherine initially protesting that she didn't want to be the reason for any disruption to his royal duties. William had gently but firmly explained that this wasn't about her being a burden, but about him choosing to be the husband and father he wanted to be during the most challenging period their family had ever faced. The conference room where the meeting took place had hosted countless discussions about royal strategy, public relations, and ceremonial planning. But the atmosphere this morning felt different, charged with the electricity that comes before significant change. William entered the room with a calm demeanor that masked the nervous energy he felt about delivering news that would challenge decades of royal tradition and expectation. Sir Clive Alderton, the principal private secretary, had prepared an agenda focused on adjusting schedules and managing public communications around Catherine's health situation. He expected a discussion about reducing certain commitments and possibly postponing some international travel. What he didn't expect was for William to begin the meeting by announcing that he would be stepping back from virtually all royal duties for an extended period to focus exclusively on supporting his family. The silence that followed William's announcement was profound. Around the table sat individuals who had devoted their careers to royal service, who understood protocol and tradition as fundamental principles that guided every decision. The concept of a senior royal family member voluntarily reducing their public role to such an extent was so far outside their experience that they initially struggled to formulate a response. Lady Susan Hussey, the most senior of the advisors present, was the first to speak. With the diplomatic skill that had served the royal family for decades, she acknowledged William's dedication to his family while gently questioning whether such a drastic step was necessary. Surely, she suggested, there were ways to adjust his schedule that would allow him to support Catherine while still maintaining his essential royal functions. William had anticipated this reaction and had prepared his response carefully. He explained that Catherine's treatment would require not just occasional adjustments to their schedule, but a fundamental reordering of priorities that would make it impossible for him to give his royal duties the attention and energy they deserved. Rather than providing half-hearted service while distracted by family concerns, he preferred to step back completely and return to full duties when he could do so with complete focus and commitment. The financial implications were raised immediately. Royal engagements generated significant revenue for charities, supported local economies, and maintained important diplomatic relationships. William's reduced presence would have cascading effects that extended far beyond his personal situation. The Treasury officials present began calculating the economic impact while communications experts worried about public perception and media reaction. William listened to these concerns with respect but remained unmoved in his decision. He had spent weeks considering every angle, every possible consequence, every alternative approach. The conclusion he had reached wasn't impulsive or emotional, it was a carefully considered choice based on his understanding of what his family needed and what he could realistically provide while maintaining his integrity and authenticity. The discussion turned to precedent, with several advisors citing historical examples of royal family members who had continued their duties despite personal challenges. William acknowledged these examples but pointed out that each situation was unique, and what had worked for previous generations might not be appropriate for his family's specific circumstances. He wasn't rejecting the concept of duty, but rather redefining it to include his responsibilities as a husband and father. Sir Edward Young, the Queen's former private secretary who had remained as an advisor, raised concerns about public reaction and media interpretation. How would they explain this decision to a public that expected consistency and reliability from the royal family? William's response was straightforward: they would tell the truth. He would explain that his family was facing a health challenge that required his full attention, and that he believed the best service he could provide to the monarchy was to handle this situation with integrity and return to duties when he could do so effectively. The conversation became more heated as various officials pressed their case for alternative approaches. Perhaps William could maintain a reduced schedule rather than stepping back entirely. Maybe other family members could provide the support Catherine needed, allowing him to continue with modified duties. Each suggestion was met with William's polite but firm insistence that he had made his decision based on what he knew was right for his family. Prince Anne, who had been consulted about taking on additional duties, had expressed support for William's decision while acknowledging the practical challenges it would create. Her endorsement carried significant weight, given her reputation for unwavering dedication to royal service and her understanding of the demands placed on senior family members. If Princess Anne believed that William's choice was justified, it would be difficult for others to argue that he was abandoning his responsibilities. The meeting stretched on for hours as various scenarios were explored and contingency plans discussed. Event organizers would need to identify which engagements could be postponed, which could be reassigned to other family members, and which were so significant that they might require William's presence despite his reduced schedule. The complexity of royal planning meant that his decision would have implications stretching months into the future. International considerations added another layer of complexity. Diplomatic visits that had been planned, state dinners that had been arranged, and ceremonial events that carried significant political importance would all need to be reconsidered. Foreign Office representatives stressed the potential diplomatic consequences of canceling or reassigning these high-profile events, particularly those involving sensitive international relationships. William found himself defending not just his decision, but his right to make it. The institutional nature of royal life, with its emphasis on continuity and predictability, seemed designed to discourage exactly the kind of personal choice he was making. But he remained convinced that authenticity and integrity were more important than maintaining a schedule that would force him to be physically present while emotionally and mentally focused elsewhere. The children's needs became a central part of the discussion. George, Charlotte, and Louis would require additional support and attention during their mother's treatment, and William felt strongly that this support should come primarily from him rather than from staff or extended family members. His own childhood experiences, particularly during his parents' troubled marriage and his mother's death, had taught him the importance of parental presence during difficult times. Catherine's perspective was shared with the group, including her initial resistance to any changes in William's schedule and her eventual understanding that his presence would be the greatest gift he could give her during treatment. Her strength and grace throughout the diagnostic process had impressed everyone, but William wanted to ensure that she never had to choose between his royal obligations and her own needs for support and companionship. The medical team's recommendations were reviewed in detail, with particular attention to the periods when Catherine would need the most intensive support. The treatment schedule included times when she would be particularly vulnerable to fatigue and emotional stress, periods that would require careful management and constant availability from her primary support system. William's presence during these critical phases could make a significant difference in her recovery and overall well-being. As the day progressed, the initial shock of William's announcement began to give way to practical planning and problem-solving. While many advisors continued to hope that he might reconsider or compromise, they also recognized his determination and began focusing on how to implement his decision in a way that would minimize disruption and maintain public confidence in the monarchy. The communication strategy became a crucial focus of discussion. How they announced William's decision would significantly impact public perception and media reaction. Too much detail about Catherine's condition would violate their privacy, but too little information would fuel speculation and potentially harmful rumors. The balance between transparency and discretion required careful consideration and expert guidance. William's own emotional state throughout these discussions was remarkable. Despite the pressure from advisors and the magnitude of the decision he was making, he remained calm, thoughtful, and absolutely certain about his choice. His conviction seemed to grow stronger as the day progressed, reinforced by each conversation that confirmed the complexity of what his family was facing and the importance of his full commitment to their welfare. The meeting concluded with a tentative timeline for announcing William's decision and a framework for managing the transition period. While many questions remained unanswered and many concerns unresolved, there was a growing acceptance that William's choice, however unprecedented, was final. The focus would now shift to ensuring that his decision was implemented as smoothly as possible while maintaining the dignity and effectiveness of the royal family's public service. The public announcement of William's decision came on a grey Tuesday morning, delivered through the official channels that the royal family used for significant communications. The statement was carefully crafted to convey the seriousness of the situation while maintaining the privacy that William and Catherine valued so deeply. It explained that due to Catherine's health challenges, Prince William would be reducing his royal duties significantly to focus on supporting his family during this difficult time. The reaction was immediate and intense. News outlets around the world picked up the story within minutes, and social media exploded with commentary, speculation, and expressions of support. The public response was more complex and nuanced than palace officials had anticipated, revealing a deep divide in how people understood the role of modern royalty and the balance between personal life and public duty. Many members of the public expressed overwhelming support for William's decision, viewing it as evidence of his genuine love for Catherine and his commitment to being a present father and husband. Comments poured in from people who had faced similar challenges in their own families, praising William for prioritizing what truly mattered and setting an example of authentic devotion that transcended traditional expectations. However, there was also criticism from those who believed that royal duty should supersede personal preferences, regardless of circumstances. Traditional monarchists argued that William's decision set a dangerous precedent that could undermine the stability and reliability that the public expected from the royal family. Some commentators suggested that he was abandoning his responsibilities at a time when the monarchy needed consistency and strength. The media coverage ranged from sympathetic to sensationalized, with different outlets interpreting the announcement through their own editorial lenses. Tabloid newspapers focused on the dramatic aspects of the story, speculating about Catherine's condition and analyzing every detail of the family's recent public appearances for signs of the crisis they were facing. More serious publications offered thoughtful commentary about the evolution of royal duty and the challenges of balancing public service with personal authenticity. International reaction added another dimension to the story. Royal families from other countries expressed support for William's decision, with several sharing their own experiences of managing health crises while maintaining public responsibilities. The global royal community seemed to understand the unique pressures that William was facing and respected his choice to prioritize his family's well-being. Within the palace, the days following the announcement were filled with intensive planning and coordination. Staff members who had worked for years to perfect the intricate ballet of royal schedules found themselves redesigning entire systems to accommodate William's reduced presence. Event coordinators reached out to other family members, charitable organizations scrambled to adjust their expectations, and diplomatic officials worked to reschedule important international engagements. Catherine's reaction to the public announcement was a mixture of gratitude and concern. She was deeply moved by William's willingness to make such a significant sacrifice for their family, but she also worried about the criticism he might face and the burden that would fall on other family members. Their private conversations during this period were filled with mutual support and reassurance, each trying to ease the other's concerns about the challenges ahead. The children's response to their father's decision reflected their different ages and levels of understanding. George, who was beginning to grasp the significance of royal duties and public expectations, was initially confused about why his father would step back from responsibilities he had always described as important. William's explanation about the need to take care of family first resonated with the boy's developing sense of right and wrong, and he eventually expressed pride in his father's choice. Charlotte, with her characteristic directness, simply asked if this meant Daddy would be home more often to help Mommy feel better. When William confirmed that this was exactly what it meant, she seemed satisfied and moved on to more pressing concerns about her upcoming school project. Her practical acceptance of the situation provided a reminder that children often understand priorities more clearly than adults who get caught up in complex considerations of duty and tradition. Louis, at 6 years old, was primarily excited about the prospect of more family time and didn't fully understand the broader implications of his father's decision. His innocent enthusiasm for having both parents more available served as a constant reminder of what truly mattered during this challenging period. The first few weeks after the announcement revealed the practical reality of William's choice. His daily schedule, which had typically been filled with meetings, events, and travel, suddenly had space for the ordinary moments of family life that had often been squeezed into brief intervals between official duties. He found himself available for school pickups, bedtime stories, and the countless small conversations that build strong family relationships. Catherine's treatment began during this period, and William's presence made an immediate difference in her ability to cope with the physical and emotional challenges she faced. Having him available for medical appointments, treatment sessions, and the recovery periods that followed provided a level of support that would have been impossible if he had maintained his full royal schedule. The medical team noticed the positive impact of William's decision on Catherine's overall well-being. Stress levels that had been elevated during the diagnostic period began to decrease as she realized that she wouldn't have to manage her health challenges while worrying about the impact on William's professional obligations. The relief was visible and measurable, contributing to a more positive prognosis and better treatment outcomes. Royal staff members who had initially been skeptical of William's decision began to see its benefits as they observed the family's improved dynamics. The children seemed more settled and secure, Catherine appeared less stressed despite her health challenges, and William himself seemed more focused and present during the official duties he did maintain. The quality of his engagement in the limited activities he continued seemed to improve when he wasn't constantly worried about competing obligations. Public opinion continued to evolve as people saw the results of William's choice. Stories emerged of other families who had been inspired by his example to prioritize their own relationships during health crises. Support groups for families dealing with serious illness reported increased participation from fathers and husbands who had been motivated by William's decision to take a more active role in caregiving and emotional support. The charitable organizations that had been affected by the reduction in William's schedule found creative ways to adapt and continue their important work. Some discovered that the public attention generated by his decision actually increased interest in their causes, as people were inspired by the example of putting human needs first. Others benefited from increased involvement by other royal family members who stepped up to fill the gaps created by William's absence. Princess Anne's increased activity during this period was particularly noteworthy. Already known for her tireless work ethic and commitment to royal duties, she took on additional responsibilities with characteristic efficiency and grace. Her support for William's decision, both in private and through her increased public presence, sent a powerful message about family solidarity and the importance of supporting each other during difficult times. King Charles also played a crucial role in supporting his son's decision, despite his own traditional understanding of royal duty. His public backing of William's choice helped to legitimize the decision and reduce criticism from traditionalist quarters. The king's own experience with health challenges had given him a deeper appreciation for the importance of family support during medical treatment. The financial implications of William's decision, which had been a major concern during initial planning, proved to be less problematic than anticipated. The increased public interest in the royal family's human story actually generated additional support for many royal charities, and the improved efficiency of William's limited engagements meant that his reduced schedule was still highly effective. Media coverage began to shift from sensational speculation to more thoughtful examination of modern royal duty and the evolution of public expectations. Commentators noted that younger generations seemed particularly supportive of William's choice, viewing it as evidence that the royal family was adapting to contemporary values about work-life balance and family priorities. The diplomatic community also adjusted to the new reality with remarkable flexibility. International partners expressed understanding and support for William's decision, and many shared their own cultural perspectives on the importance of family care during health challenges. The human dimension of his choice seemed to transcend cultural and political boundaries, generating goodwill that strengthened rather than weakened important relationships. As the weeks passed, William found that his decision had created space.